Welcome, ladder leaders. Listen, I'm so excited that you were able to join us today. Listen, if this is your first time, welcome to the Ladder Leadership Podcast. This is where you can find information on not only leadership tools, but how you can better yourself as a leader, how you can move your team in a direction that they are called to go towards the vision. And I really do believe that every person that God has placed underneath you, you'll be able to manage them well so that you can be able to empower them in a direction that they are called to go as well. I'm your host, AJ Washington, and I'm so excited to be here today. Give yourself a hand for joining in. Listen, and I just want to encourage you that if you want to get involved in some of the other things that we have going on, I just want you to check out below on the description box all the things that you can do. We have a ladder newsletter. We also have some information on the Design to Lead book, how you can purchase it as well. And then check out the website so you can just stay tuned with what is happening in areas near you. And I am so excited about this topic today because I really do believe that we are entering into a new phase, a new dimension as we come up on the end of this year. It is time for us to start thinking differently and for us to start challenging our norms. Sometimes we get into places in our lives where it is stagnated by default because we've sometimes gotten into a routine that is mundane and we're just trying to finish out the year. The seniors would call it senioritis. And so I don't want us to ever get to that point. And so today, we are going to be talking about leaders who force disruption. Listen, phone your friends, share this content if you believe this is something that somebody else should hear. I believe that you could be the conduit in which God uses to share a great message with your friend. But no other thoughts. I'm going to dive into this dynamic topic, and we're going to be talking about leaders who force disruption, navigating change on your own terms. Um, I want you to understand that we have to be clear about the direction that we are heading. And if we are not, we can sometimes run into things that causes us or that forces us off the tracks and will discourage us or even sometimes unmotivate us to pursue our goals with the force and the tenacity and the passion that we are normally pursuing it. And so, even in a realm of leadership, disruption is inevitable. We have to understand that change is going to happen. And we can sometimes be the conduit in which change has happened, or we can live by change happening by default because of the life that is happening around us. And so failure is usually articulated when your goals are not clear. And sometimes we can find ourselves moving, especially towards the end of the year, in a life where not only our vision for what we want is a little bit cloudy because we haven't been actively pursuing the thing that God has called us to pursue, but we also move into a realm where we really don't even know what we want from ourselves. And so failure to articulate your goals clearly can lead to unrest in both your personal life and in your professional development. And when you're not able to clearly understand what you're going after, you will aimlessly go after anything and you will have a shaky foundation on your way there. It's almost like you are by default looking at what is working for other people and you change your direction because you feel like the road is smoother because it's smoother for somebody else. And when we live in the area of comparison, we usually focus our identity off of what someone else is becoming versus who we are supposed to become. And so I want us to analyze ourselves, especially as we are moving towards the end of the year and in the last 3 months of this year, for us to really understand what we are called to do and are we becoming the person we were called to become. Listen, I want to just take 4 statements that are really about to disrupt your thinking, all right? I want to take 4 statements. One is vague leadership is rewarded with vague community. Vague leadership is rewarded with vague community. Ambiguous answers won't engage your audience. Ambiguous answers won't engage your audience. I want to say that one more time. Ambiguous answers won't engage your audience. Fuzzy communication leads to frustrated people. Fuzzy communication leads to frustrated people, and unclear expectations can lead to unfulfilled desires. The reason why this is so important is because the minute you become vague as a leader, you will start defaulting into a community or being around people who have vague thinking as well, where they usually just go with the flow. And when people are moving with the flow, by default, they are moving along with the trends of this world instead of setting the trends that this world should live by. You are the standard, and you should set the standard in which people look to exemplify their life after. That's what leadership is all about. It's influencing people. It's not commanding people or manipulating people, but it's influencing people to live a life that is completely contrary to what they are used to seeing. So when you are a vague leader, you will start attracting a vague community, and a vague community gives life to your comfort. However, if you are a leader that understand not to live in the vagueness of this world, then you will demand a growth in areas that has no other choice but to produce discomfort, in which most people do not like to live in. Then you go into this other segment. When I said the second statement, it says engage ambiguous answers won't engage your audience. People need to be clear on where you stand. I believe, and I love going into the Word of God, especially when it comes to how Jesus asked or how Jesus set the standard for us to really exemplify ourselves. And when he tells the disciples, let your yes be yeses and your no's be no's. And so we have to be more clear on how we understand where we're moving towards so that we can be more specific in what we are giving our answers to and how we are responding. I also want to say this. I also want to highlight this is fuzzy communication leads to frustrated people. When you are leading from a place that is causing disruption, one of the things that you have to understand is how to communicate the vision that you have been given so that people can have clear expectations on where to go. Whenever there is unclear expectations, it leads to unfulfilled desires. And we by default go to unfulfilled desires because we can throw off expectations on how we perceive people. And when they fail those expectations, we lose hope in what we desired in the initial outcome when we were coming and being connected to those individuals as well. So we have to understand that even in the midst of fuzzy communication, to be clear on what you are expecting from other individuals, and then what other individuals expect from you, which will inevitably clear up the communication. We're talking about disruption. We're talking about understanding how to go about life in a disruptive way and stop allowing life to disrupt you and you taking control in that area. Now, here are some of the ways we sometimes lose effective, we sometimes lose the ability to not actually be disruptive. Number one is we are going too fast. The minute that you are moving too fast, you're trying to get to your next opportunity, you're trying to get to your next successful moment, you're trying to get to your next, you start losing a sense of what is changing around you, and you don't have a pulse of your environment, and you are going ahead of your team and there's no one following following you, but you are driven by your own ambitions. You are driven by your own motivation, but you can only get so far, but you can only get so far by yourself. If you leave the team behind, you will never get to your dream the way you want to get to your dream. So you have to understand how to effectively pace yourself so that you can be in alignment with how you are called to function. And not only that, you can be more focused on what you were called to do, perfecting those areas so that you won't lose a pulse of what is happening around you. And then number two is sometimes we move too slowly. There are people with the analysis paralysis disease where we sometimes evaluate a little bit too much and we can be brilliant thinkers but with no action. And if you find yourself in an area where you are a brilliant thinker with no action, it is time for you to change your environment, disrupt some of the things that are taking place in your life, and literally put yourself in an area where people in your environment is challenging you to produce action. Remember, your action gives you the understanding and the experience that is needed so that you can be connected to what you are calling out of people. Experience is the best way to drive that. And then when you are pushing too hard, one of my favorite stories is Michael Jordan. Michael Jordan was one of the most was arguably one of the best players in the NBA, and that dispute is still going on today. And one of the things that we see from him is that he was not only able to win championships, but take teams to a championship as well. After he retired, he moved from being a player to an owner of a team. And that same behavior, that same tenacity to really push the team hard, it translated over into the office as well. And that team dynamic really disturbed the place. But not only that, it caused a sense of not being able to really partner up with what was going on because it was being forced too hard, or that he was too hard on them in the same way when he was on the team. And so as a leader, you have to understand there are areas that you are supposed to disrupt, and then there are areas that you are supposed to learn so that you can be able to reconstruct areas to perfect the ability to produce an effective outcome instead of taking your methods and driving them and forcing them in every single area of your life where you force people to do things that their heart is not connected to. Then number three, it is just being too soft or being too slow. Disruption is not gentle. There will be times when you will offend the people around you because you have to commit more to the calling that God has over your life. And so you have to understand how to dismiss what people are saying about you because you said yes to what you have been assigned to do. People will always love you at the level in which you can give to them. But true love really understands that not only do I love you when you are helping me out in my need, but I love you enough to empower you to send you to the need that you need to accomplish in your life so that you as a person can be complete. Anybody who cannot love you past that, it is not love, it's lust. And lust without boundaries usually lead to disruption. So you have to understand what part do you play in individual's life, because if you go into soft, you will always diminish yourself in order to fit into an area of them, or in order to fit into an area of what they see you as so that they can feel comfortable. And that will only devalue some of the things that God has placed on the inside of you. Listen, when you force disruption, it is an act of just acknowledging reality that something has to change. Something has to change. When you understand the fact that something has to change, then listen, it tempers it tempers your speed so you're not moving too fast. And then it gives you the opportunity to motivate those who are moving too slow. So when you are disrupting change, you are causing your environment to never get used to how it should be or how it has been. You always challenge your environment, challenge the people around you, challenge your team to always go after innovativeness so that the disruption that is happening by default because of the creativity and the innovation that is happening in the room. Listen, I want to give you three things that happens when you force disruption. Number 1 is that your mind changes. Your mind is challenged by the way you think. One of the things that is so important, especially when you are challenging your mind, you give yourself the ability to think outside of how you used to been thinking, to see things from a different lens and to perceive things in a different way that stretches you to really move into the way you were called to function and outside of the way you have been programmed to function by the way you thought previously. The reason why sometimes you cannot cause disruption is because you are not confident in the way you think. You are not confident in your ability. And sometimes we need to move our mindset into a way of understanding who you are as a person and demanding that side to be manifested out of life. And so your thinking is directly connected to how you disrupt the things that are happening around you. Number 2 is your methods of doing things. You then, whenever you cause disruption, the standard or the way you used to do things, you cannot do them no more because the way you used to do things was conducive to the environment that you were currently in. But once you disrupt that environment, it causes you to learn not only new methods, but to function in a different way. So, learning new methods not only is growing me as a person, but is literally making the principles and my values come alive in my life. And it's almost in a sense that I am becoming the message that I am speaking to other people. You want to become the person that you are speaking. It is one way to talk about it, but it's a whole nother way to be about it. The third one is maximizing and minimizing. Maximize what you should be doing and minimizing or delegating what you shouldn't be doing. When you maximize what you should be doing, every single ounce of your time is being used to a productive measure even in the time of downtime. We live in a world where we sometimes think when we are not doing anything that we are sometimes wasting time. However, time can also be used to produce creative ideas, to produce creative thoughts, so that you can be able to operate at a level that causes you to make a positive decision because of the time you put even in the midst of downtime. When you understand what you should be maximizing, then you understand what you should be saying no to. And so when you say no to things, it gives life to your trade-offs. Your trade-offs are the things that if I say yes to this area, I will have to say no in this area. Everything that you are saying yes to gives you a maximum ability to be more aware of how you were called to function, how you were called to live, and it gives you the ability to function in a way that you were called to function and not waste time doing the minimal things that can sometimes be distractions and keep you away what you were called to maximize. Listen, forcing disruption elevates your standards. And whenever you force disruption, it requires you to ask yourself four things. Number 1, what do I want? Don't be ashamed to demand what you want. Number 2, how would achieving it make me feel? Do not be ashamed to say that if I was doing this, I would feel much better. Number 3, what obstacles are in my path that are keeping me from actually accomplishing this? And then number 4, what do I need to ask? Or who do I need to ask? What are some of the things that you are not asking that you need to ask that's going to set you up and put you at the level that you are called to be on? Listen, I am so excited that you decided to join today. I hope the information that you heard gave you life and was able to bring some type of value on the inside of you. If you click below in the description box, you'll find out more information about what's going on at the ladder. And I really do believe that if you stay connected to what is going on, not only will your leadership increase in your personal life, but professionally and every single thing around you has to change because you are individuals who force disruption and not live life by default waiting for disruption.